the opposites between pleasure and pain, hate, love, good moods, bad moods, pain and pleasure, heat and cold, darkness and light. All of these opposites we find become increased as people get more involved in delusion, where the ego becomes stronger. And as it becomes stronger, you'll find, I remember reading in college, the Sun Also Rises, isn't that the name of it? By Hemingway, and being struck by the intense depression that would hit these people when they'd, or the hero particularly, when he'd get alone in his room without all the bullfights and the parties and the drinking and the noise, and suddenly he was alone, face to face with himself, and this terrible downer that came when he had gotten away from the superficial excitement. Well, the more people live on a level of excitement, one time Dhyamata asked Master, why was she experiencing moods? This is when she was a young girl. And he said it's because of indulgence in sense pleasures in the past. And the opposite to those good moods are bad moods. And so, learning to differentiate between those and exclude both, she was able to remain balanced. Well, in that way, we find that the consciousness gets more and more and more extreme as we get involved in the delusion. But the beginning of it is that spirit is one. And when spirit manifests itself in creation, it has to take on the appearance of opposites. And this is an illustration I've used often here. The mean level of the ocean is always the same. When you've got a wave, you can't say that the wave has changed the level of the ocean. No matter how high that wave goes, it can't change the mean level of the ocean. When you've got this wave on the surface, it always creates a compensation. No matter how high the wave is, it will always have a compensatingly deep trough, and no matter also how low the wave is, there is that little tiny dip in the ocean. And when spirit creates, first of all, it creates on the causal level, where all is just in thought, and those thoughts are very close to the consciousness of the infinite. And so the thoughts are all basically blissful, even though some are there's joy in pain if we're not attached to the pain. We can see that through that pain there are lessons to be learned. Through that pain we can see that this is what causes people, souls, to be drawn back into the infinite. And so to be aware of pain is not to necessarily suffer. It's simply to see that these things exist. And so in the causal level and in the consciousness of people who are close to God, who are in tune with God, you find that the ripples exist, otherwise they would simply merge back into God. But the ripples don't bind. The ripples are all expressions of bliss. To a master, everything is blissful. Even though he sees the people in this world suffering, to him it's all just variations of light, shadows and light. And so he's not touched. And this little fluctuation is very slight. But the more the ego begins to develop and begins to think of itself as separate from the divine, the more you find that wave getting bigger and bigger. And as the waves get big, then they begin to crash against each other, as opposed to the little ripples, all of them sort of in friendly interaction with one another when they're small. But in the big egos, the consciousness of people as that I'm totally separate, not only from the source, but from all other people, and I've got to get mine, even if it means taking from others. And so you find competition and hatred and jealousy and all the various emotions that build up to greater and greater delusion. So it is that you get from that level of duality, which is sattvic, which is very reminiscent, no matter what its expression, very reminiscent of the spirit, expressive of the spirit. Then you come further into agitation and movement as the spirit, as the consciousness begins to move more in the mind, the thoughts begin to move more in the mind, the ego begins to develop and begins to think, I am I exist as a reality in myself. I, Jim Brown, am an eternal person, and I am not the same as Helen or Prakash or anyone else. I'm me, and I've got to get mine. And so, first of all, there is this sort of agitation in the mind of competition and striving and so on. But then, as it gets worse, the wave begins to get very big, and it begins to think that here I am opposed by all these other people, and the only way I can ever get my own is to kill them all, destroy them, move them aside, put them in prison. And so you develop evil. You develop not mere worldliness, but hatred of an intense type, murder, warfare, really tamasic, darkening qualities, that the stronger this quality grows in the individual, the more difficult it becomes to imagine that there is any other reality but yourself, any other good but that which affects you. It doesn't matter what happens to anyone else. You develop the fiendish ability to enjoy the torture of other people, enjoy seeing them suffer, because it's sort of like being in a warm room with the snow outside in a blizzard, and you feel, all the warmer and more cozy knowing that everywhere else it's so horrible. And so you feel all the more happy knowing that you aren't suffering, even though all of those people are. And it sort of reaffirms this sense of security. It's obviously a pipe dream. Sooner or later you're going to find that you will get clobbered.